As someone who lives in the Pacific Northwest, I can tell you from firsthand experience that 40 days of straight rain does not necessarily flood the globe. But if you've been a Christian child in the last few hundred years, you probably know the story of Noah's Ark, where a man named Noah built a really big boat with some cute animals in order to survive a world-ending flood sent by God. It is a foundational text in the book of Genesis. But if you think about the logistics of building a boat to house 2 of every living creature, or how hard it would have to rain, or how Noah was supposedly over 500 years old when he built it, the story is clearly larger than life. And you'd be well within reason to ask, wait, what's up with Noah's Ark? One of the most dangerous ways to read the Bible is literally. Our sacred text is a collection of books and stories compiled by hundreds of authors over thousands of years of oral tradition in multiple languages. It contains poems, letters, parables, legal doctrine, and countless examples of metaphors wrapped up in allusions and surrounded by centuries of interpretation. So when you hear a story like Noah's Ark, you have to remember that it was told within a specific context to a specific people. And it's impossible to fully understand the story's meaning without first acknowledging that it's one of many flood stories from around the world. A deluge myth is an archetypal story block used by nearly every culture to explain some aspect of how the world came to be and why. And the story of Noah in the Bible is no exception, but here's a brief rundown so that we're on the same page. About 8 generations after Adam and Eve were exiled from the Garden of Eden, God decided that humanity was too evil, and would send a flood to wipe it out and begin again. Except for one man named Noah, who was seen as uniquely blameless. Because of this virtue, God decided that Noah and his bloodline would repopulate the world. Noah was given specific instructions to 1. Build a really big boat, 2. Gather 2 of every living animal, and 3. Save his family from the coming apocalypse. He does all of this perfectly. For 40 days and 40 nights, God opens up the heavens and floodwaters come rushing in, drowning everything that wasn't on the ark. After it stopped raining, Noah started releasing birds off of the deck of his boat. And one came back with an olive branch, a sign that the waters had receded enough that the tops of trees were now visible above water. It was a symbol of God's peace. And when the last bird didn't return at all, Noah knew that it had found dry land. He, his family, and the animals disembarked, and God gave them this instruction: "Be fruitful and multiply, abound on the earth, and have dominion over it." Then God promised to never flood the earth again and signed this covenant with Noah by stretching a rainbow across the sky. Now, a deluge myth is a story where some type of god or other extraordinary being decides to flood a land, usually wiping out humanity. On the 11th tablet in the Epic of Gilgamesh, a god named Enlil decides to flood the great city of Shuruppak, but another god named Ya or Enki tells one man how to build a boat. The man eventually finds dry land by sending out a raven. And a quick side note here, Enki happens to be the Mesopotamian god who crafted mankind out of clay. Remember that for later. In the works of Roman poet Ovid, specifically the Metamorphoses, he writes of the ancient Greek flood myth in Book 1. At the end of the Bronze Age, Zeus decided that humanity was too wicked to survive, so he sent a flood to destroy the entire world. But Prometheus told his own son what Zeus was planning and gave him instructions to build a really big boat and save his wife. Once the floodwaters had receded, the 2 surviving humans were given a prophecy to toss the bones of their mother over their shoulder. When they picked up rocks, which are the bones of Gaia, or Mother Earth, new humans started sprouting up from the ground. The humans that Zeus had drowned were only made of clay. These new humans that repopulated the world were stone. In Mesoamerica, there are several deluge myths, including a Mayan myth where the gods are trying to create humans out of different materials, but then the wooden ones turn out to be evil. After they're drowned, the gods remake humans out of maize, and this design can finally carry a soul. There's an Incan flood myth where a god named Viracocha destroys an evil race of giants that he'd created. After the world drains, Viracocha then creates humans out of pebbles. The Aztecs believed that the gods had already drowned all of humanity, except for one man and one woman, who used a hollow cypress tree as a giant boat. Once the world dried, one of the gods gave them instructions to only eat maize, so that their descendants would be scattered across the world, speaking many languages. There's even a Colombian myth from the Musica people where the god Bochica rides in on a rainbow and drains the earth by striking a giant waterfall. So as you can see, the peculiar details of Noah's Ark are also shared by hundreds of other stories from around the world, all seemingly independent of one another, because deluge myths are apocalypses that inspire hope. They're not solely about anger or wrath or judgment. At the end of each story, humanity is saved and the world is reborn again. Floods were a common natural disaster, especially for civilizations that depended on rivers like the Nile, Euphrates, Amazon, the Jordan, etc. Human agriculture was built on these somewhat unpredictable cycles of flooding, but with destruction always came new, fertile land. When the Hebrew people first told the myth of Noah's Ark, it wasn't a ghost story to scare their children into behaving better. It was reassurance that God had a covenant with their ancestors, that God had already made peace with them, and that this was their second chance. Flood stories aren't about the end of the world. They're about divine mercy and how we can work together to build something better.